Thank you, Mickey. Hi, everybody. My name is Ali. I'm a grateful alcoholic. I like that adjective, fantastic. But I would attribute that more to this beautiful, fantastic program and a fantastic fellowship and a fantastic loving God that we all get to tap into in our own way. Thank you so much for being here. For those that continues to stay with us, appreciate your time as always. I appreciate the team. I appreciate you guys. This wouldn't happen without you guys. The Spirit put on, I guess, all of our hearts to join together and try to seek a little bit deeper. In my experience, either God is everything or else he's nothing, you know? So if God is everything, if I've taken that huge spiritual assignment on that I'm going to try to look at this life in the third dimension as if God is everything, then everything is a message and everyone's a messenger. Nothing's personal. Everything's a message and everyone's a messenger. So if we could please get one of you messengers who's on your heart to lead us in with your own version of the set aside prayer, to please put up an electronic hand and lead us in. Whoever is moved to do the set aside prayer for us, any version that you want. There we go. Tuesday first. Tuesday first.
Thank you. God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself and what will keep me sober so I can have an open mind and a new experience with everything, especially you, God.
Amen. Thank you, Tuesday. Okay, here we go. Okay, so Kristen, if I could please ask you that move from now, just share only whatever you think you need to share from what we're talking about in terms of highlight this and highlight that if you want to share that. But just please share the directions of today's session and just the inventory sheets. I want them to be up there a few times for people. So Kristen's going to be kind enough to share the link to the or Kuna is going to do the inventory sheets, right? You guys can just click on it and download it on your laptop. And then if you haven't gotten last week's inventory sheets, we sent it an email, we put in the chat for the resentment inventory. You can just follow the directions and make one yourself in a notebook, right? But if you need that, we'll resend it to you and Kuna's going to repost it here, okay? So that's one. And then also, not to worry, if you haven't been able to write the directions, like, you know, what we did first session, second session, so you can sort of duplicate that because especially at the beginning, we jumped around a little bit. Don't worry at all. This week for sure, following this workshop next couple of days, I'm going to send you the directions, the table of contents of the entire thing, okay? So you guys can have it, you can print it off for yourself, and you can just, you can have it. So please don't worry about that. All right, so fear inventory. Whew. Evil and corroding threat. Okay, let's start. Notice that the word fear, we're on page 67. The last paragraph is where the fear inventory begins. Page 67, last paragraph is where the fear inventory begins. Notice that the word fear, please circle with pen fear. I'm excited about this. I like fear inventories. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. That's an example that he was previously. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. Please got the yellow highlighter or whatever highlighter you attribute important statement to. Highlight from here to. It was an evil and corroding threat. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. Continue highlighting yellow. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve, period. Continue in yellow, last sentence. But didn't we ourselves set the ball rolling? That's all in yellow, very important. Okay, so soon I'm gonna ask for some hands from some of you messengers to please share your experience. Again, and when we share, just a reminder, not a general share, not when I came in, laser like 30 seconds, okay? So it was an evil and corroding threat. Fear in my life has been like like it eats away at the fiber of my existence. It's destroyed everything in my life. If you notice, the last thing that they ask us to take a look at, well, in a fourth column, right, is where was I frightened, right? Underneath, as we talked about last week, I believe it was, underneath every resentment, fueling and underlying resentment, there's a fear. There's a concern that I have that I'm not going to get my way. Either I'm going to lose something I have or not get something that I want. If I didn't have that concern or fear, I wouldn't be resentful. I wouldn't care. There's some kind of deep-seated self-centeredness inside of me. We saw a couple of sessions ago, right? The root cause of my trouble is a self-centeredness, deep-seated self-centered fear inside of me. It set in this fear sets in motion trains of circumstances, which brings me misfortune, which I didn't think I deserved. It's like a domino effect. Trains of circumstances. That's how I think about it. But didn't we ourselves set the ball rolling? Okay. So in the example of my dad that I shared with you guys, that I had a resentment that came up. I don't know if you remember, if you were here. So him and my mom were going at it. I went for a visit. I saw him punch my mom in the shoulder. I saw red. Spirituality went out the window. I went and punched him in the chest, and then I yelled and screamed. It was just a mess, right? So that one. So one of the fears that came out of the inventory I wrote was that him never getting better. And so him always being a burden on us, and then the other fear was him never getting better and always being tortured by his mind, right? That's a fear that I had. Him always being a burden on us, him never getting better, those two fears. So when I look at that honestly, where did I set the ball rolling in this, in that instance, right? Where did I set the ball rolling in that instance? He was just being who he was, acting from fear without a solution, tortured mind, tortured life, right? I went in, I saw him punch my mom. He didn't really hurt her like that. You know what I mean? I just grabbed as an excuse and I just started to go off on him. I punched him in the chest. I started to yell and scream at him. And we just left him. And I just left him. It's like I threw gasoline on him and I dosed him with gasoline and set him on fire. And we just left him for about a month. I took my mom away, didn't contact him. I'm the one who set the ball rolling in motion. Trains of circumstances, and after I'm pissed off at him. How could he do this to me? Now I can go back even further to see where I set the ball rolling, but before that I was fine. You know what I mean? I was peaceful with him. Him and I were good, right? Like in every situation, every single relationship I got into, my relationships never worked out, by the way. This marriage has been a work in progress, and I've grown up as a man in this marriage with God and you guys, okay? So every single relationship, if I'm honest with myself, I'm the one who set the ball rolling. Fear of being alone, fear of not being good enough, not being loved. Get into relationships with people that are broken like me, ignore the red flags, try to suck the life out of them, give me attention, give me love, give me approval, make me feel okay. Not a concern about how they're feeling, their wounds, what's happened in their lives. I'm the one who set the ball rolling. And then I blame her? Trains of circumstances, but then didn't I myself set the ball rolling? Now, if I'm honest with myself, I can see that. It's a very freeing experience. I don't have to see it right now. This inventory process, resentments, fears, sex inventory, reading it to a sponsor or someone I trust, taking it to a 6th and 7th, just frees me of that. Just frees me of that so I can breathe. All right, so sometimes, okay, set the ball rolling. There's a question mark in there. There's a question mark in there. Just please put a Y somewhere there if you can relate to that. Evil encoding threat, trains of circumstances. That's what the fear does. I take fear-based actions that never work out. Never work out. Sometimes I'm sure that maybe you got, I'm a little bit at fault, but I think that you're more to blame, right? Never works out. So if you could please, on the right margin, just write long ways, like turn the book counterclockwise so the right margin is facing you. Just covering the fear inventory paragraph, please write fear inventory. So we know that's where the fear inventory instructions begin. Fear inventory. sometimes, continue reading, sometimes the next page, we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. Okay, perfect. So this is what, please if I can get some hands, okay? So what was in the yellow? What was in the yellow with the question mark? Just clear cut, 30 seconds, very succinct, your experience with that. Okay, past or present, doesn't matter. Okay, and while you guys are allowing spirit to move you and to see what you're going to share, I'll just share on this. Fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble that way. Fear ought to be classed with stealing because it steals away from me everything worthwhile in life. Fear robs me of relationships, of peace of mind, of joy, of opportunity, of everything good in life. Not only me, but it robs everyone around me as well. Everyone who touches my life is engulfed. I'm talking sobriety now sometimes, eh? I'm talking sobriety now. Okay, so perfect. Sandra, come on up, please, on the yellow, your experience.
Yes, I'm Sandra, I'm an alcoholic. The part about an evil and corroding thread, the fabric of our lives was shot through with it. I realized at some point that there's a fabric like called shot silk, and there may be other things that are shot something, and they've got, you know, the some threads are going this way, and then a different thread is going that way, like a shiny thread, and when you turn it, it looks different. And so I'm saying that when fear is in a situation for me, it looks different. So I have to find a way to look at it from a different angle.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sandra. Is that it? Thank you, Sandra. Perfect. Beautiful. So, Lana, specific example in your life. This fear did this to me. That's how I can relate to this. Okay, let's go, Lana.
Hi, I'm Lana. I'm an alcoholic. For specific examples, I remember doing my fear inventory and being fearful of rejection and abandonment and all of this. And I think it's really pertinent that it says, didn't we set the ball rolling? And it brings back thoughts back to the third step, being the actor, trying to control everything, because my fear is absolutely my self-will. And so every time I felt insecure and scared, then I would try to grasp somebody tighter to make them love me harder and force them to do what I needed to reassure me. And I was lacking the reassurance that I needed, which was from my higher power. And by the end of my fear inventory, everything was like, I'm being silly. This is all in God's hands. And it was really a powerful experience. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much. Okay. Who's next? Michelle, there we go. Michelle, hi, come on.
Hi, I'm Michelle, I'm an alcoholic. Fear paralyzed me. It just totally paralyzed me my whole life growing up. And so that therefore I was afraid, I was full of fear to have anybody. I had walls up that nobody could penetrate me, or I was not going to love them because they were going to abandon me. And when I got into recovery and I opened myself up, even though I was married, I opened myself up and I found out what my higher power took away that fear, because I literally lived in fear constantly, and allowing God in allowed me to love. So that's what fear means to me.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much. So Vinay, please come on up, please.
Hi, I'm Vinay. I'm an alcoholic. Growing up, I had a very, very strong dependence on my mother. Absolutely like dependent. And that might have been fine until the age of 15 or so, but I never grew out of it. And when I got married, I transferred that dependence onto my wife, something she was completely ill-equipped to and not, couldn't do. And that caused so much fear and resentment in me towards her because my expectations were not being met. That fear really destroyed the first, I think, 10 or 12 years. I don't know how we survived it, but I'm over that now. Thank you.
Beautiful, Vinay. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to ask if you can now for the next few hands, only if you move to it comes to you. I want to hear some current ones today. They have this fear. and this what it's doing to me. Okay, so this is how it's setting the ball rolling. This is how it's stealing things away from me. Okay, if you can, if you have it. Keithan, come on up, please.
Thanks, Ali. Everybody, Keith, an alcoholic. So I won't say, I don't know if it's today, but it's very recent. About 2 weeks ago, I quit a job, and the fear in quitting that job was, of course, the financial stability and the you know, just the assurance and like the safety. But for months leading up to it, my passion wasn't there, my heart wasn't there. I didn't believe in the mission, and I was really like driving myself insane by wanting to leave, but afraid to leave because I just, fear of what could possibly go wrong in the financial world and what I'll look like to this boss who gave me the job, and don't want to face and have that tough conversation. So fear caused me to stay in this position much longer than I would have liked to. And finally, through prayer and inventory, because I did write a recent inventory on it, and that allowed me to access the courage to go ahead and leave.
Beautiful.
But it was
Thank
a
you so
painful
much.
last few months.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Okay, so let's pause on the sharing, but please keep your hands up because I'm gonna come back to everybody that has their hands up. Thank you, Keith. And so when I say today, I mean these days, right? The most recent fears, like these days. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go back to the big book. Please keep your hands up. I want to come back to you. Top of page 68. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. Okay. Highlighting yellow, we asked ourselves why we had them. Continuing yellow, wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? That's in yellow. So what we're going to do today, I don't know how the spirit's going to move, but I think it's best to go through the next 3 paragraphs and come back and then go to the fear inventory sheets and try to explain the sheets. I think that'll be the best thing to go about. That's the best way to go about it. So we put them on paper, right? So all the where I get my fear inventory fears from is from the 4th column of every single resentment inventory. There's at least 1 or more fears there, right? So that's where I get the list. And then after that, well, I'll repeat this after. Everybody here, almost everybody knows. And then after that, I sit in prayer and I ask God to show me if there's any other fears that didn't show up on that resentment inventory. I want a comprehensive list of current fears. Not when I was a kid, but I'm no longer afraid of that. Current fears. What's more prevalent for me? I get the list from the 4th column of every single resentment inventory that I've written today, right? Today, at this workshop, let's say, right? I add it to that. I don't duplicate. So if it's 5 different fears of financial insecurity, I just put fear of financial insecurity one time, right? And then I pray and I see what other fears are still prevalent in my life these days that didn't make that list. That's how I make that list, okay? And then it says, we asked ourselves why we had them. That's in yellow, and again in yellow, as I said. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Please circle the word self-reliance. And if you can somehow weave a line to the top margin there, however you want to get it there, from that circle self-reliance, top margin, and we're going to write this: self-will / me playing God. Self-will / me playing God. Okay, self-will / me playing God. I'm going to keep reading. Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. Okay. Question mark after worse, put a little Y to the right if you relate to that. So in the fear inventory, we'll come back to this, okay? So the big book gives us a very clear example of how they were inspired in spirit to push forward 89 years later, the first 3 columns of the resentment inventory, right? How should we consider doing it, right? And then they say, look at it from a different angle. So that's a 4th column in the resentment inventory. In the fear inventory, they don't do such a thing. They don't give us any example. There's some questions to ask, okay? We'll come back to this now. But the question that the big book wants the Spirit wants me to ask myself is really in every single fear, wasn't it because self-reliance failed me? Why do I have this fear? Isn't it because self-reliance failed me? Not why do I have this fear? I have this fear of being left alone, being abandoned because my father left us as a kid. I'm not saying that's a wrong way to go about it. That's just one way. But I don't believe the big book asks that. It doesn't say what happened to you as a kid that you had that causes fear. It says, wasn't it because self-reliance failed you? Don't worry about writing any of this down. When I go through the sheets, it'll make it so much more clear, okay? So the big book is saying, Ali, you're not a bad person for having fear. We all have fear, right? And you're not even a bad person for doing the fear-based actions that have caused turmoil in your life or anyone else. You just been trying not to be afraid. You've just been trying to control and manage this fear all throughout your life and with this situation. Just the way you go about trying to control and manage it hasn't worked. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed you? That's a different way to look at it. I think it's very profound if I'm coming across. I'm not sure if I'm coming across. So one way to look at it is, why do I have this fear? I have this fear because my dad beat me, my dad left us. I'm just making something, right? I have this fear because my dad left us. I have the fear of abandonment, right? Fine. Psychological approach to it. Nothing wrong with it. Beautiful. A good psychiatrist can eventually get me to that, right? Right? But it's still in the problem, okay? The big book asked me a totally different question, I believe, the spirit of it. Why do I have the fear? How do I know? Is because it follows it by a rhetorical question. You have this fear. Don't worry about what happened happened to you as a kid. Acknowledge that. Be sorry about that. That's painful. It should never happen to you when you were molested by those two 15-year-old kids, right? But we're asking a different question. Why do I have this fear right now in this situation? Isn't it because everything I've tried in my life, including this current fear, to just not be afraid, has failed me? So the big book is asking me, isn't it because the solution has failed you that you're trying to employ? Oh, you mean self-reliance as a solution to getting rid of this fear doesn't work for me? Okay. You mean when it makes me cocky, it's worse? Oh, I see it. Yeah. Because they're leading me to something, to a nice paragraph, right? I'll give you an example. Man, I feel like I'm all over the place, so I hope it's coming across. So I was a martial arts instructor and a fighter for a long time in the ring, okay? And like a full contact Olympic karting game kind of stuff, provincial team for a long time. I used to be a really good instructor. I used to teach kids, classes of kids and adults, right? The kids' parents used to love me. They used to always come and tell me, "Oh, you're a great instructor. We love you." So I used to always hear that and thank them. And every time they said that to me, I would leave feeling horrible, because deep down I felt like I wasn't good enough. I had a fear of not being good enough. And when they would tell me that, I would say, but only if you knew the real me. The only reason you like me because you think I'm good at this. But if you knew me without this talent, I'm not good enough. I got into martial arts because I was a fear of being beat up. Because my dad used to beat me. I wanted to protect my mom from my dad, yeah. And the kids on the street, to protect myself. That's why I got into martial arts. Do you know that I was afraid before every single fight? Even though I got in the provincial team? Did you know that? I trained so hard because I was so afraid. And at times I was cocky, man. I was a cocky fighter at times. Did you know that I was only cocky because I was afraid? When I was cocky, it made it worse. See, self-reliance is good. Self-confidence is good. But see, with me, I have such a deep down, this is true now, right? It's not so much in me these days, but deep down, man, deep down, very deep down for years, fear of not being good enough. Thank God for this program that it's not as bad, you know? And no matter how much you praise me, no matter how much you scolded me, doesn't matter which way you went, I would still take that and make it mean I'm not good enough. No matter how much I accomplish, there's always something else to get to because I'm not good enough. And made me cocky. You see people that are aggressive, they're afraid. You see people that talk about themselves a lot, they're afraid. You see people that need to be the center of attention, they're afraid. How do I know? Because I am that. They're my mirror. Not because I'm judging them, they're my mirror. God is everything. Everything is a message for me to get better, nothing to do with everyone else. Cocky worse. Next paragraph says, perhaps there's a better way. We think so. Ready? Now they're leading us to something. Self-reliance hasn't worked, right? Your solution hasn't worked, right? Yeah, it hasn't worked. In yellow now, for we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. That's all in yellow, right? We are on the world to play the role He assigns. That's the end of yellow. And the yellow at He assigns begin with for we are now. So now that I see that my self-will to control and manage these fears that I have currently hasn't been working, it never worked my entire life. Now I'm on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. I trust infinite love, infinite power. I'm going to at least try it on rather than my finite, limited self. See, I've been in the world when I'm afraid, I start to assign roles to people. You should treat me like this. You should say this. You should acknowledge me. You should be kinder to me. I assign a God role. I assign God role. I know you handled the marriage thing and the drinking thing. This financial thing, I got to take care of it. So you know what I'm going to do to take care of it, God? I'm going to put up a front. I'm going to lie a little bit here and there. I'm going to not to go to work sometimes, cancel appointments because of fear. I'm going to judge other people. I'm going to be jealous of them. I'm going to throw people on the bus at work. Because that's how I try not to be afraid. I don't know what else to do. My super laughing, you relate? Right? I assign everybody else a role. But see, I forget, I'm in the world to play the role He assigns. Remember in the third step, the deal I made? God, you're the director, you assign me a role as an actor. You're the principal, you assign me a role as the agent. You're the employer, you assign me a role as an employee. You're the father. You give me directions. As a little lost child, I don't know what to do, man. You know? Pink, please. The rest of this paragraph, it's a promise. It's a beautiful promise. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. Just to the extent that we do and we think He would have us and humbly rely on, does He enable us to match? Beautiful, beautiful. So I love this. What a promise. Now moving forward, for me, I look at these words right now, that moving forward for me on a deeper level, just to the extent that I think He would have me. I love it. It's not even just to the extent that He would have me. What a humble statement though, right there. And how low this power has set this bar for me, just to the extent that I even think this power would have me do what He would have me do. Does He just show up and match the calamity in my life, the turmoil that's within myself, with peace and serenity in my life? Peace and serenity in my life. By the way, just a quick little note there. So when it says just to the extent that we think we do as we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him, I don't see that as like, if my brain tells me to do something, that's God and I do it. That's in the context of what's revealed to me to do out of a relationship with the sponsor, out of going meetings and sharing, out of writing inventories, out of praying and meditating on it, and then just to the extent that he would have me do what is revealed to me. That's how it comes to me, not because my brain tells me so. You know what I mean? Especially when I'm newer, or especially when I've had my foot off the gas pedal for a while. Now, obviously, in step 11 talks about this becomes a working part of the mind. Yes, I become more intuitive and in touch with this, with this higher love. It comes at me instantly sometimes, but for some stuff that are bigger, that I have to put pen to paper, I wait for the revelation after I read it to somebody and sat with it and prayed about it, just to the extent that he would have me in that way, you know? Thank you for keeping your hand up. We're going to come to you. We just have one more paragraph and we're making pretty good time. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality is a way of weakness. I used to think that. Boy, was I wrong. For me, paradoxically, it is the way of strength. I heard someone say, and it's so true, this entire program is like filled with paradoxes. Like Bill Wilson says it this way, when Abby Thatcher took him through whatever the steps were, the Oxford group in the hospital room there, when he stayed when he got sober, he talks about common sense thus becomes uncommon sense. What I thought before doesn't make sense anymore, doesn't work. I used to think spirituality is a way of weakness. Well, it seems to be a way of strength. I used to think depending on a power greater than me is a way of weakness. What's a way of strength? In fact, I used to think talking about my weakness and acknowledge them is going to destroy my life. And it's actually weakness, but it's strength. Isn't that amazing? When I admit powerlessness in any area of life, that I can't do this on my own, God, I seem to be destroying my life, God. Can you please help me? And I come to you, one of you guys, then I get filled with power, man. That's unpowered. Paradox, uncommon sense, right? Opposite of what you usually think. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. Highlighting yellow, please. Faith means courage. Highlighting yellow, faith means courage. Continue in yellow. All men of faith have courage. Continue in yellow, they trust their God. Okay. No more yellow. We never apologize for God. Now this line in yellow. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. Faith means courage. See, in this book never tells me you're wrong or bad for having a fear. You should never have a fear. Oh, you're 10 years sober, 5 years sober, 30 years sober. Why do you have the fear? You're not spiritual enough. You're a failure in this program. Lies. Fear and faith can't exist. Not my experience. God better exists when I'm in the fetal position at home. Because I can't find a job to help support a family, and my brain's telling me you're a loser, you're not a real man. My brain's telling me wouldn't it be better if you sober. My brain's telling me wouldn't it be better if you weren't here anymore? Sober. God better exists. Faith better exists. My God exists. My God is so big that exists when I'm filled and riddled with fear. That's my experience. He better exist. He better exist. The definition, faith, all men of faith have courage. So definition of faith courage is not having fear. Please forgive me. That's stupidity. I need to have a certain amount of fear for self-preservation. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to close my eyes and walk into traffic. I'm afraid to do that. Right? If there's a dark alley and I see a bunch of guys with hoodies in there, I'm not going to go there. I'm afraid. Fear is going to keep me safe. Nothing wrong with fear, right? Having fear. The problem with the fear that I have, every single fear in my life, it it shows itself up. I experience it as if I'm in a safari and a lion is literally chasing me. That's a problem with the kind of fear that I have. Every single fear, you know? All men of faith have courage. The definition of courage is me having faith. This is the spiritual, I believe, the big book definition of courage. This is my opinion. Okay? Me having faith, and despite that fear, in the face of that fear, taking a course of action so I can watch God demonstrate through me what he can do. That's courage. With fear. With fear. Let God demonstrate through me what he can do. In sobriety, thoughts came to take my own life. Depression, can't get out of bed for a month. Darius, my 9.5-year-old, was 6 months old at that time. Full of fear, man. But you guys introduced me to a course of action that I get to tap into a loving power on a deeper and deeper level on a daily basis. That then start to send men in my way as I am continuing this course of action of trust God, clean house, help others, just better today than I was yesterday. I start to experience to send men and women in my path that are suffering from depression. I got to share with them, and they got to see him demonstrate through me what he can do. And the fear starts to dissipate. And the external condition never changed. Isn't that amazing? And my faith got stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. Instead, we let him demonstrate through you what he can do. In pink, please, the rest of the paragraph, promises and prayers. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be at once we commence to outgrow fear. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be at once we commence to outgrow fear. Okay, that's a prayer. To the right of fear, in that little space, to the right of fear, please write in capital letters, fear prayer. Please, fear prayer. All right, so now, fear prayer. Okay, so the question for the people that have their hands up already, okay, is, again, you know, it would, you know what, always, the reason this program has, I believe, has so much, like it says, that, you know, doctor's opinion says depth and weight, right? The message which can hold these hopeless alcoholics when fraught emotional appeals and doesn't suffice for them. The only thing that can hold them is a message that has depth and weight. I believe depth and weight comes from personal experience. I believe depth and weight comes from not really unpacking this book, is pouring personal experience on it, you know? It just makes this book thousands of kilometers deep. So if I can ask the people that have their hand up, if you can bring some personal experience, specific personal experience of these days, or if these days doesn't come to you, you can grab one from back there like that, right? So let's look at this one. How does self-reliance, I had this fear, these are the ways I tried to not be afraid, and then self-reliance failed me. It failed me, right? Maybe on that, how your self-reliance fails you in not being afraid. And then on this one, when you're afraid, how do you assign roles? How do you assign roles to other people? Do you assign roles to different people? Are you really here to play the role that God assigns? Something like on the first yellow that we did, page 68, and the second yellow, these two yellows, anything from those highlights, okay? And I know I just threw it on you last minute, so if you can't move whatever the Spirit moves, share, like just share whatever the Spirit moves you to share on, please. Ali, come on up, please. Dear Ali, come on up, please.
Yeah, thanks, Ali, alcoholic. Yeah, I can do that with the self-reliance fails and the roles. Yeah, just quickly, fear at work. it's I through AA I got to be a lawyer, but I don't feel like I deserve that, and every single second I'm trying to prove that I'm good enough to be one. And so self-reliance fails in the role. So I got a superior who has to supervise me. And I was like, okay, I will just do whatever you want me to do, and I'm just going to people please him, and I am just your servant. I am just, I serve you, and I would stroke his ego and do all of that stuff. And his role for me that I assigned him was that, well, then you must, like, I should be able to depend on you for all my answers, and that you're my work god. None of that worked very well, and I've now got a massive resentment with him, which I can't shift. That's it.
Thank you, Ali. Beautiful. Thank you. Mari, come on up, please.
Thanks, Ellie. So I have a role as a trusted servant in AA in different capacities, and I'm a procrastinator. So I put off doing things like minutes reports, sending and responding to emails, and I freeze. So my role is like a victim, and I know in advance. But what I do then is I know that God is the director, so I pray. And it's amazing how I can get things done. You know, the things that seem very onerous and difficult aren't so bad. And especially if I don't let them pile up. And I think it all stems from that I'm not good enough. My report's not going to be good enough. There's too much to do in the minutes, but God does come through when I let him. Thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Lauren, come on up, please.
Hi, everybody. Lauren, alcoholic. Yeah, this is like a perfectly timed discussion, because just this morning before this meeting, I was making a list of all the stuff that I was going to buy and put together and prepare for Easter next weekend when I'm going to with my family. And then I just realized I always overdo it. And I it's because I'm, not fear of not being good enough. Fear, wanting to be admired and wanting to people please. I want others to admire me and love me and take notice of me and blah, blah, blah. And I go to crazy lengths to, if I rely on myself, I go to crazy lengths. I spend too much money. I spend way too much time, preparing things that people are like, are you kidding me? Like, what, did it take you like 3 days to do that? I mean, it's just incredible, like the lengths I'll go to get that admiration and praise. And same thing at work, I'm in a position where I should be saying no a lot more. And I'm not, because it's easier for me to just stand back and salute the flag and be like, okay, if that's what you want to do, we'll do that. And that's, again, fear of not being liked, fear of not being accepted. It's just all like, I made this big, huge list of things that I do based on fear. Throw others under the bus, gossip, spend too much money, work too hard, dress up, make up, buy too many new clothes, micromanage people, speaking to others rudely, people please, and not breaking habits. Like, those are all coming from fear. So this is, so I the way I'm working that now is I just have to keep saying the fear prayer, like constantly. Remove my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be, and get my head off myself. Thanks for letting me share.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lauren. So we're going to stop now, but please keep your hands up. We're going to come back to you. We're going to be sort of on the same. Here you go. Kuna, can everyone see this? Can you see this, Kuna?
Yeah, all good.
Sorry?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so Kuna has put this link and we're going to send an email out. This is the fear inventory sheets, okay? So I'm going to ask to please, okay, so again, this is not the only way Okay, for sure. This is one way to do a fear. Where is this thing? Okay. There we go. The last few years, I've done so many different styles of fear inventories. Okay, some of you may be familiar with this, and because and it's left to interpretation in the big book because they don't give us a clear example. They ask us to consider some questions of the fear inventory, right? And I know in the past, I'm not going to name any names because all valuable workshops and all amazing giants, like usually sometimes what people do is because there's not much going on fear inventory, how to do it. People have taken the resentment inventory sort of the way to do it, right? And just do the fear that way a little bit, right? In columns. There has been sometimes people have done I have done just like a short question, like, wasn't it because self-reliance failed me? Yes, right? And that's it for the fear, say the fear, right? And all valid, all powerful. I've done so many different ways. This is probably the most powerful fear inventory that I have experienced. And I know it's probably familiar to some of you guys. So let's go through it. So first of all, I make a master list of all my fears, and that's on the instructions that are going to be emailed. That's in the chat already on today's session. Master list is every single fear from the fourth column of every single fear, resentment inventory. I put it on that list, right? And then I pray I add any other fears that didn't come up in those inventories. So that's my master list of fears. Let's say I have 10, 15, 25, 3 fears, right? Each of those fears will be taken through these questions, okay? So fear, what is the fear, right? Let's say fear of not being good enough. Okay, fear of not being good enough. The second question is, why do I have this fear? That's taken directly from the big book we highlighted. If you can have your big book open, page 68, we ask ourselves why we had them, right? And then ask us, wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? So all the big book is asking me, the big book wants me to come to that realization on my own. That's the only thing that it's asking me to do. Is regarding this fear, don't I have this fear currently in my life? Not because of what happened to me as a kid necessarily, but let's look at it differently. Because self-reliance to get rid of this fear has failed you. That's all it's asking me. It wants me to rhetorically come to that question, come to that answer, right? So the next few questions we're not going to see in the big book, but please just set everything aside, and please. The next few questions, although they're not in the big book, they help tremendously in spiritually unpacking my ideas and the way I show up. They put it on the table so I can answer that question, isn't it because self-reliance failed? Okay, so second question, why do I have this fear? So we're not going to answer it. I used to answer it in the way that what happened to me as a kid, but I found after some time that was bondage. I keep going back. I have this fear because they did this, No. Why do I have this fear? One way to look at it is, please answer this question this way. If this occurs, then what am I afraid of? That means what's the underlying fear? Okay, so if it was, for example, fear of not being good enough, right? So if I'm not good enough, then what am I afraid of? Then what am I afraid of? If I feel like people don't think I'm good enough, will I be alone? If I'm alone, not good enough, then what am I afraid of? I won't have any happy relationships. If I don't have relationships, what am I afraid of? I will be unfulfilled. I'll be unhappy. I'll drink and I'll die. I'll just take it to wherever the spirit stops me to take it, right? So I'll be alone, comma, I'll be unhappy, comma, I'll drink and I'll die. That's it, right? Next question is, how have I been using self-reliance / self-will these days and throughout my life to control and manage this fear? Okay, so in order for me to get to a place where I see that I have this fear because self-reliance has failed me, first I have to put in black and white how I have been using self-reliance to control and manage this fear. Fear of not being good enough. How I've been using self-reliance in the current situation or throughout my life? Well, I put up a front. I pretend that I'm something that I'm not. I lie, I maneuver, I manipulate, I get resentful. I talk behind people's back, I gossip, I get resentful. I already said that, right? I put people down. I need to talk about myself. I need to be the center of attention. That's how I've been. I'm not a bad person for doing those things. I'm just afraid. And I'm trying not to be afraid so much. So how I've been using self-reliance, right, to control. So that's how we do that one. The next question is, have my self-reliance efforts as listed above solved my fear problem? By the way, you don't need to write these questions. They're posted in the chat, this document, and we'll email them to you. Okay, so just stay with us together. Okay. Have my self-reliance efforts as listed above solved my fear problem? That's not in the big book either. But if I want to get to the question of has self-reliance failed me, first I have to list how I've been using self-reliance, and I have to ask myself, has it been working? Well, if it was working, then I wouldn't be writing a fear inventory, right? If it wasn't working, I wouldn't be tortured by it and thinking about it sometimes, right? Sometimes it's, yeah, it worked, but no, maybe for a short period of time, but then it made things worse. Okay, so I concede to myself, no, it hasn't worked, right? It hasn't solved my fear problem. Next question, what negative effects have my self-reliance effort caused in my life? Don't have genuine relationships, constantly afraid, always worried about what others think about me, losing jobs, so many, drinking back in the day, always fighting, always tension. The next question is, do I now believe that I still have this fear because self-reliance has failed me, right? So we ask 1, 2, 3 questions to unpack what I've been doing, really, using self-reliance and how it's affected my life, to get to the question that the big book wants me to answer. They want me to answer, was it because self-reliance failed you, Abby? And now I can ask myself, do I now believe that I still have this fear because self-reliance has failed me? Because it's in black and white, I wrote it down. I don't have this fear today, I don't believe, because of what happened to me as a kid. What happened to me as a kid happened to me. If I still have this belief system that I have this fear because of what happened to me as a kid, then I'm in bondage. And I have the belief system that the external, what happens in the outside on my past experiences define me for the rest of my life. Then I'm dead in the water. That's not what this program says. I don't worry about what happened to me as a kid at this point. Not in this, not over here, not over here. I'm not saying that's not valid to get some solutions for. Of course it is, right? Over here, I just want to know, do I have this fear today? Because the solution that I've been employing to throw people under the bus, to talk about myself, to lie, to deceive, to put up a front, to put up an image, this solution, this right here, hasn't worked. That's why I still have this fear, because that hasn't worked. See, if I look at it this way, that the solution that I've been employing, sometimes unbeknownst to me, automatically, the isms of alcoholism and my self-centered, my ego, has been driving me through 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, and self, right? When I look at that, that solution hasn't worked. And then I can be open to like, oh, we are on a different basis. So maybe infinite power can help me do what the finite mind hasn't been able to do. Do I now believe that I still have this fear because self-reliance has failed? Okay. And the next question is, am I willing to trust and rely upon infinite God rather than my finite self? Because in the second yellow in the big book, that's what it is. We get it in the next few questions, we get it directly from the big book, turning statements into questions. It says on a different basis, we trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. Now that's the question. When I can answer, I have this fear because self-reliance has failed me, and then I can be open to like, oh, the solution that they're proposing. Am I willing to trust and rely upon infinite God rather than my finite self, just because it hasn't worked, my finite self, right? Yes, hopefully over there at this point in time. And then there's a prayer. As I was saying earlier, what a revelation to me it was a few years ago when I started to write inventory with prayer throughout. Resentment inventory with prayer throughout, right? And the fear inventory. So there's a prayer. God, please remove this fear from me and direct my attention to what you would have me do and what you would have me be. And that's directly from the big book, okay? The do part, we turn it into a prayer where it says, just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us, and we think we do what he think he would have us, right? That comes from there. And then the B part comes from the last line that we highlighted. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. So the prayer is, God, please remove this fear from me and direct my attention to what you would have me do and who or what you would have me be. So I say that prayer every single time before I answer that last question, and I sit with it, and I ask the question from Spirit, what do I think God would have me do, and who would he have me be in order to humbly rely on him and as it relates to this fear? And the Spirit answers. God would have me trust him. God would have me, if I had a fear of not being good enough, God would have me in every interaction pray how I can make the other person feel good enough. God will have me be kind and generous, be in service to his kids. Whatever it comes, I don't know what comes, right? God will have me pick up the phone and call my sister and love on her, even though she was unlovable. I don't know what the message will be. I'm not going to assume that. I got to sit in prayer on that one, see what it comes. Okay, perfect, beautiful. So now let's, let me see what we can do here. Let me stop sharing. Okay, perfect. So, everyone okay with that? Fear inventory? Yeah? Okay. It has been, for me, some of you may have done a version of that. For me, it was revolutionary because I've done it all kinds of different ways. It has been one of the most profound fear inventory experiences that I've ever had. This fear inventory. So now, if we could go and have some sharing around the first, okay, you know what? A brave soul that has a current fear, that wants to, oh, there's Mary's hand up, okay. Current fear that wants to run through this fear inventory with us. Okay? Perfect. So I'm gonna
alcoholic, and I love this. Okay, my current fear. I'm gonna turn off my video because I think my internet's a little sketchy.
Sure.
Is that my daughter, who's a 31-year-old, alcoholic. Am I still on?
Yeah, Mary, you're still on. So do you have the fear
Okay.
inventory sheet up there somehow? And then on a computer?
I wrote it all down.
You wrote it
Yep.
down? Okay, so let me, okay,
Yep.
perfect. So let me just,
So
okay, inventory. So I want you to please, so no explanations around anything, okay? Because the
yeah,
self always wants to explain or rationalize and like, you know, just make things complicated. Very, very simple. What is the fear?
okay.
Fear of,
The fear is my daughter's gonna die of alcoholism.
okay, thank you very much. Thank you so
Why?
very much. Okay.
Very significant health issues. She just got released back to her rehab from the hospital after having extreme septic shock. Yeah. My self-reliance.
So hold on 1 second. We're gonna stay together. You're doing a great job. I'm just pulling it up on my phone. So I don't, okay, perfect, because I want to see everybody. So first question is, what is the fear? The second question is, and I know you probably didn't get a chance to write it all down. That's where we're gonna email it. And so why do I have this fear? So I'm gonna invite you to stay away from the third dimension reasons why you think you have this fear. Like, because what's happening, right? Or what happened. That's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to invite you to look at it differently, okay? So we're asking ourselves, why do I have this fear? And in brackets is, please answer this question in this way. If this occurs, then what am I afraid of? Which means, or another way is, what is the underlying fear? So in this case, if your fear is my daughter dying of alcoholism, okay? So you're going to ask yourself, if this occurs, if my daughter dies of alcoholism, then what am I afraid of? Like, what is it that I'm afraid of is going to happen? So please, I invite you to be with me on this one, okay? So what are you afraid of? God forbid, God forbid, God forbid, God forbid, right? We're not talking about it. If this occurs, what's the fear?
She's gonna die.
Okay. Please forgive me.
Pain.
It's hypothetical. If she dies, what's the fear?
I don't know. I failed her.
Okay. I'm a failure as a mother. If
As
she
a
passes
mother?
away, if she passes away and you are a failure as a mother and you're seen that way, what are you afraid of? What's going to happen? How are you going to feel?
I work
So please go ahead.
porn. I might pick up
Okay.
terrified of my identity.
Okay. Beautiful.
The
You're doing-
pain
Yeah.
of losing a child.
Beautiful. You're doing great. Okay. So I'm going to just stay with me on this one. We're going to make it really short and succinct, right? So if fear of losing my child to alcoholism, what am I afraid of? If this occurs, what am I afraid of, right? We're going to write in that, I'm going to be seen as a failure as a mother, comma, I'm going to pick up, comma, the pain I'm going to feel, how I'm going to feel, I'm going to be unhappy. I'm going to be tortured.
Yeah.
I'm going to be unfulfilled. I'm going to be in pain. Are you with me on that one?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you see that? Okay. So we're not saying that, God forbid, something like that happens, someone should be walking on water. No, we're not. We're doing something else here. We're trying to be free. We're trying to let God direct us here. Okay. So do you see that through that question? What becomes evident is that really what I'm afraid of is how I'm going to be affected. Do you see
It
that?
affects me.
Do you see that?
Yes. Yes.
That's how powerful this. That's why fear is an evil and corroding threat. It robs me of everything because I think my fear, my concern, not that it's not. I'm not saying that it's not. But if I'm honest with myself, to the degree that it grips me today for something that hasn't happened yet, there's nothing to do with what's going to happen or what's happening. It has to do with how I'm going to be affected. What's the root cause of my
I'm not
illness?
going to be okay.
What's the root
Yeah.
cause of our illness? Selfishness,
Self-centered fear. Yep.
Self-centered.
Selfish and selfishness.
selfishness and self-centeredness. That's the only thing that blocks the sign of the Spirit from me.
Yep.
And when I have that, and that's why that's why I got to write a fear inventory. That's why I got to take it to a sponsor. That's why I got to sit in 6 and 7. I got to clean up if I need to. In sobriety. Why? Because if I allow my life, my actions to be dictated by that fear, I'm going to destroy any remaining time I have with my daughter here on earth now. I may go tomorrow. I don't know.
Right.
But I need to be unblocked so I can be filled up by the power of this loving God, so he can assign me roles in this situation and demonstrate through me what he does, so I can be useful. My concern needs, I'm talking about me, I'm talking about you. My concern needs to be put on usefulness, not the uncomfortability of what may or may not happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right? Okay, so beautiful. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being so generous with 260 people. This is called generosity in spirit. When somebody bears their
Thank you,
soul.
Alice.
Okay? So now, next question. Okay, so come with me. So how you ask yourself, okay, so those are the deeper fears, really self-centered fear. Okay, now how have I been using self-reliance, self-will these days, and maybe throughout my life, but let's say these days, to control and manage this fear of my daughter dying of alcoholism? What have you been doing to try to control
I got this one down.
Beautiful.
I've got this one down.
Okay.
Emotional blackmail. the best present you could ever give me is sobriety. I pointed her in all the directions, bought her literature, given her people to call, meetings to go to, ad infinitum. Told her all about my story. I'm sober. I've done the
Beautiful,
work.
beautiful.
All you have to do is what I tell you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Anything else came to you? Can I suggest some stuff?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm just going to throw some stuff, right? Exactly what you said. So this was what I have done with my dad. Okay. So he's an addict, right? Judge him. Be harsh
Yep.
with him at times. Talk down to him from a spiritual hilltop. Try to play God in his life.
Mhm.
Right? And so much more, right? So we just keep writing karma, and then the spirit will stop. Okay, that's enough. That's enough. That's how I've been using
Right.
self-reliance. So you see on black and white there. And the next question becomes, you got to ask yourself regarding your daughter, this situation. But here's the thing too, I don't want anyone to ever think that, please don't take you, I'm a bad person. No, with a good motive, with a good heart. I'm trying to help my dad. But the thing is, when self is involved, I destroy everything, okay? So the question becomes, because it's about me, not about him, really, you know? Mary, have your self-reliance efforts, as listed above, as we just talked about, solved your fear problem?
No,
No. Beautiful.
no.
Okay, next question is, what negative effects have your self-reliance effort caused?
Financial,
life.
well, there's been bailing her out financially a lot. And I had always planned to move to Maine, but I stayed in New York for years and years. Well, when Emily gets sober, I'll move. When this happens, I'll move. And I finally, a year ago, just made the leap. Now I have the guilt feeling of, if I were there, maybe she wouldn't have picked up again, right?
Right.
Because
So,
I manipulate.
yeah, playing God, right? Playing God. So negative effects, right? Self-reliance. What you just mentioned there, right? Would you say
Yeah.
at times yours and your daughter's relationships has been strained?
Oh, yes.
Right? Would you say there's lack of peace and lack of trust?
Yes.
Is she sober?
No, she's in the rehab for probably the 6th time right
Okay.
now.
Okay. So you can see in black and white that you trying to manage and control this fear by self. Well, not that you're bad, but you're a mom. Are you kidding me? Anybody could, right? It just doesn't work.
Right.
It just doesn't work. It's cause negative, it destroys everything. Okay. So now that you're here with me and 260 people, 256 people and a loving God, do you now believe that you still have this fear because your self-reliance is failing you?
Yes. It's constant. My self-reliance is what gets me in those places of sheer, despair. And when I stop and bring God back in, I start feeling peace.
Beautiful. And we're
It's
not
the-
there yet. Okay, we're on that question. We're not there yet. Self-reliance has failed me. That's
Mhm.
where I am, right? Are you willing to trust and rely upon infinite God rather than your finite self right now, in this moment, moving forward, okay? Are you willing to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it doesn't tell me that I'm going to do it perfectly, eh? I'm just willing. I just got to bring a humble heart of willingness to this power, man. All right, God, I'm going to try again, right? Here's a prayer. Okay. Did you write down the prayer?
Yes.
Okay. Would you do the prayer with me together?
Yes.
God,
God, please remove my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be.
What you would have me do and who would you have me be? Any version of that, right? Now, obviously, I would
I
sit
just-
down with some, maybe a few minutes and just ask God and just see what the Spirit wants to tell me. But now, for the sake of what we're doing, the last question is, Mary, what do you think God would, who do you think God would have you be? And what do you think God would have you do moving forward? And in order to humbly rely on him as it relates to this fear of your daughter?
I think he wants me to trust him and rely on the fact that she has her own God, she has her own higher power, and it's not me.
Beautiful, right? It could be so many things that God, I don't know the situation. I'm just saying what's coming to me and from like dive deeper into Al-Anon.
Right.
Maybe,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Love on her.
Love.
Okay? I think diving deeper into Al-Anon is a good one.
Mhm.
So just, yeah, exactly what you said. And God would direct. See, we're not gonna make the assumption, I know the answer. I don't want to do that. Because my ego wants to stop me from having a new experience by giving an answer to a question right away. No, I gotta sit with it. I pray about it. I sit for a few minutes as I'm writing inventory, allow God to come. And also, don't forget, in a fifth step, things become more clear. Maybe things that I don't see through a sponsor or someone else, right? Oh, okay. That's powerful stuff, man. Okay, beautiful, fantastic. Thank you so much, Mary, for doing that.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Very nice. Beautiful. Okay, so thank you so much. Beautiful. Okay, so now for the remainder of our time together, we're not gonna move forward in the big book. So just please, people that have your hand up, keep your hand up. Anyone else want to put your hand up? Mickey, let's now go to 11:30 and then say a prayer, and then we'll stay longer for Q&A. Okay, so before anyone who wants to share whatever you want to share in Q&A right now. So for next week, as Kristen has shared in the chat, and someone's going to email to everybody after. The assignment is the directions for today's session, and the assignment is if you have done this, perfect. If you haven't, no problem. Just so you know what to pass on to the new person, right? But if you've done this up to now with us, master list of fear inventory. Take each fear through one sheet, right? So if you have 10 fears, 10 of those sheets, right? In that way. That's the assignment if you want to continue with us in that way. All right, Liam, come on up, brother. Whatever you want to share, any Q&A. Nice to see you.
Hey, Ali, how are you? Grateful recovered alcoholic. My name's Liam. Just to share on a fear, I had about 4 years sober. My wife decided to quit her job, and immediately brought about resentment towards her, fear of financial insecurity, you name it, the whole gambit. And I saw this stuff kind of prevalent and immediately. And like my assignments to her, the roles that I assigned to her, she's supposed to be a partner in this marriage and raising our child, and all this financial burden is now on me. So here I go into self-pity and just checking all these boxes of the root of my problem. And then and again, I inventoried it, right back to that fear prayer, right? Like we ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have me be: a loving and understanding father, a loving and understanding husband. She was unhappy. How can I be helpful to her? And then I just let God direct my life, based on the principles of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. How can I bring that to my relationship? And that's how I deal with fears these days. So love the big book. Love this workshop. Thank you very much, Ali.
Thank you, Liam. Thanks, brother, for sharing. Heather, you have your hand up, but I don't see you on the screen. Maybe you went to the washroom. Okay. There she's coming back. Okay, this Heather is coming back.